I started the recording. If you want, you can
Thank
proceed.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Um,
Okay, great. Shall I start? Or
is it time already? Um, um, maybe 2 minutes. It
2 minutes?
says like 3 to 10, but I don't know if this is correct. Um,
Yeah, so
what's the time now? It's 10 already?
yes.
Yeah,
So
it's 10 in the
I'm
UK
an
and I
Aus.
believe 11 in Switzerland. If
Yes,
and
Okay.
it's
yeah,
11:05. Yes. So.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Then shall we start then?
Great.
Oh,
So it's late in the evening. I understand at your end. Thank you very much for joining in so late. Um, Thank you for having us. I think the idea is that we give a short introduction to a study we did in Switzerland about the value of news content, the value of journalistic content for the platform Google in Switzerland. And I think some implications also have a value for many other countries around the world. So we had a lot of feedback here from starting in the US, Canada, South America, Africa, Europe, and Asia, and Australia. So a lot of people feedbacked on the study because the question about the cooperation between big tech companies like Google, Meta, Yahoo, Japan maybe, and news corporations is in many countries a question. The question is the content of any valuable does the content have any value for the tech companies? And if so, will they be obliged to pay something for using this content in a platform? And this discussion goes on in many countries from a legal perspective. So, do we have to adapt the law, ancillary copyright law, or are there any bargaining codes between big tech platforms and the media companies? So do they come to an agreement how to share revenues? And Switzerland, very small country in the middle of Europe, is not always the first one to introduce new legislation. They always look out what's happening in the world and take the best out of it and adapt it for Switzerland. But the country is also very democratic country, so most legislation goes into public votings. And so this is two things are interesting with that. So the one thing, if you have public votes about new legislation, you have to be very careful with the legislation. So this is why they basically like to take evidence-based approaches. So before they introduce a new legislation, really look, are there any facts which foster a new legislation? That's one thing. And the second thing is if you put everything into public votes, you need media, right, to inform people about the options. If you have two options to go this way or that way, and you ask the public which way should we go, they need to be informed. And that's why media and journalism has a very high social status in Switzerland, because many Swiss people in Switzerland believe that the good functioning democracy in Switzerland is also based on functioning media. So, and as we all know, that's the same in Japan, I guess, and we've been talking about this before. That media are in a difficult situation. On the one hand, behavior of people is changing, so they're fast moving towards technical platforms to inform themselves, like Yahoo Japan, like Google, like Facebook, things like this. So that's the one thing. And with that, the advertising revenues are shifting towards the big tech platforms. So the one challenge, and of course you have other challenges as well. Maybe the people are not so used to inform themselves regularly over news content or newspaper content or media content anymore than they used to do before. So different challenges, and facing this, we are a consultancy company in Switzerland, who has been founded by a professor, by Professor Ernst Fehr. He's professor for microeconomics and experimental economic research in Zurich. So it's a very well-known research for economic studies. So this is our company, and we do thousands of experiments with human behavior every year to measure how people behave in different situations. So are people cooperating? How can you foster people to become more honest? So this is, for example, something we do for insurance companies to foster honesty. That's part of our projects, but we also work for the government, how to reduce energy consumption, change behavior here. What are the factors to change behavior? We also work for health institutions, how to change the habits, how we choose food and things like this to become more healthy. We work for companies, how to increase cooperation, how to adapt to change in companies. So this is typically what we do. We always use experiments here. And we've been asked by the Swiss Association of Publishers. So where basically all the newspaper organizations are bundled in an organization. And they asked us, what can we see out of the behavior of the people using big tech platforms? And we choose here Google as the most important platform for Switzerland. So is Google fostering, emphasizing the media consumption in Switzerland? Or is it more that it's a substitute to traditional media, Google? And out of that, can we come up with a certain number, with a value that the Swiss media are contributing to a platform like Google? And can we say how much should Google pay to the Swiss publishers to use their content in the platform? And the initial situation in Switzerland is Google is paying nothing to the publishers at the moment, right? And in many countries, Google is arguing that news is not an important part of the usage of the platform. So basically what they say is it's 0.04% of the traffic that's around news content. So they're arguing, well, it's nice that we have news content as part of our search experience, but if it's not there, the news content goes away. Well, no problem with us, basically. So they feel not obliged to pay something here for using this content. Well, we as economists, we see it a little bit different. We say, well, if there are ecosystems and platforms like Google, you have different contributors here. So you have the users, you have the technology, you have the content. And if it's a sustainable system, all these different stakeholders have a cooperation framework, a sustainable cooperation, which means that everyone knows how he can benefit from the platform. And then that you have a sustainable cooperation, which means you have feedback systems, and of course you have some sharing of the results and the fruits or the earnings you make, right? So that's the economic approach here. So look for the sustainable equilibrium. So before I go into the experiment, is what I say can you hear me? Is it clear and can you understand me, or yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. So is it also readable? Is it Japanese what I have here, or is it any different language? Does it make sense in Japanese?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
good. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Great. So I go on. Any questions, please raise your hand or just ask me. I do not see everyone, but if you have a question, please feel free to stop me. So what we did is, so how can you answer a question like this, whether there is any impact of media to a platform like Google, but you could also use a different platform like Yahoo, or you could also use Facebook here. But we just decided, as Google is so important in Switzerland, to focus on Google. So what we did is, in an experiment, we take a random sample of people living in Switzerland, and we expose them to certain search experience. And the one group, that's the control group, gets a Google like it is today, right? So we ask them, it's an online experiment, and in this experiment we say, well, you get a task from us, and the task is to search for a certain item. And we ask them, are you interested in society? Are you interested in politics? Are you interested in economic affairs? So what's your interest? And depending on the interest, we give them a search. We say, look, search. In this case, it was, for example, the Credit Suisse crisis. So the crisis of the Swiss bank Credit Suisse at the moment. We did that in February. We said, well, you're looking for information on the Credit Suisse crisis. Please search for it on Google. And that was the control group, was a Google that's looking like it is today, with all the content in there that you're used to. So it's basically what you see searching for Credit Suisse crisis. And you have media content in there. The second group, randomly assigned, also representative for Switzerland, randomly assigned, they were in a different group, the treatment group, and they saw a different Google. And in this different Google, we took out all the content coming from media companies. All journalistic content was extracted from this Google. So two groups, and we could compare them. If that was the only criteria that has been changed, is the news content. And with that, we could compare any difference we would see then in the KPIs and measuring the results, the search experience, would be due to the media content, because it was the only thing we changed actually between the two groups. Everything else was the same. So, well, this is German now, but this is basically what it looks like. My board is not moving the way I would like it to. Right. That's just that you see it. So two different groups. On the left side, you see it in the status quo like it is today. So you search for Credit Suisse crisis and you get different results. And the first result is from the Swiss Broadcasting Association, a result. And the second result is from a newspaper, Tagesanzeiger. And the third result is from Credit Suisse, so the problem bank itself, right? So this is the way people experience Google. And on the right-hand side, you see what happens if we take out all the media content. You see there is no media content here. So the first source for Credit Suisse crisis would be Credit Suisse, the bank itself. And the second one would be the parliament. And the third one is something completely different. I don't know what kind of content it is. But what you see now is, if you take out the media content, this balanced information that you have is taken away, and you have two sources. One is politics, and the other one is the company itself. So it makes immediately clear there is a difference. But the question was, would people, experience the difference, and would it make a difference for the people as well, right? And as I said, that was one example. We had different examples as well. But now we wanted to see, does it make a difference? But before, so we were also measuring the behavior. So what are people doing on the platforms? And therefore we measured, where are they clicking to? Are they clicking on the items? So are they going away from Google, or is the information that they get here enough that they feel informed? And what we see is that a large majority, 53% of the people, stay within the Google ecosystem. So the information they get here on Google is enough for them, and they do not need to click. So more than half of the people do not click on the link, right, because the information is enough, which is important actually, because only with a click, media can earn some money, right? So people are coming in, and then you can have advertising, or you can sell the content, paid content, whatever. But without a click, at the moment, you get nothing. And what we see is that in more than half of the cases, media actually do not even get the click, right? So that's one of the first findings we have here. Why is that important? Because in the arguments of Google around the world, they mostly argue, well, media are profiting very much from Google because they get all the search traffic. So what they basically say, it's a win-win situation. We link to the content and people go then there. Well, that's true, but only for half of the people, right? Or half of the searches. And for the other half, it's the only profit stays within Google. So, and then there was the second question is, do we see any difference in the perception of the people? So what you see is on the top is the Google in the status quo, so with media content, and at the bottom without media content. And what you see is that the satisfaction score goes down. If you take out the media content, people are less satisfied, 9% less satisfied with the search result if you take out the media content. And so satisfaction and were you successful? Did you find the information you've been looking for? We see a drop in 6 percentage points, right? So we see here a drop in satisfaction and success rate if you take out the media content. So first finding is people are less satisfied and less successful if you take out media content. And then we wanted to know, so how do you like the results in a more detailed way? And before that, we've been asking people, what is important for you if you're looking for information? Well, it's not so astonishing what came up, but we asked it in the experiment, and it's quality. The quality of the content is important, that it's complete, the information, that it's helping you to orientate. So it gives you orientation, it gives you context, that you can trust the information, that it's unbiased, and that it's relevant. So these are the factors actually that people value very high with information. And what we see now once again is in all these factors, if you take out the media content on the right column, if you take out the media content, you see a drop in all criteria. So once again, systematically, taking out the media content harms the experience of the search experience. So people are trusting the information less. They're less orientated. They feel it's less complete, less quality. It's less unbiased and less relevant. So in all these factors, we could our hypothesis that media have an impact on the experience of a search was emphasized here through the experiment. And we also looked for the behavior. So once you have seen the Google, now we ask you, okay, we do a second search. So once again, you're looking for information. Where do you want to go to? Do you want to go to Google now in the second search, or do you want to go somewhere else, to Bing, to DuckDuckGo, or do you want to go to the media outlets, online media? Where do you want to search the information in a second term? And what we see is, if you take out the media content on the right-hand side, less people want to go to Google than before. So Google lacks traffic, so the behavior is changing. And where do people go to if you don't go to Google after a bad experience? Well, they tend to go to the media outlets directly, so to the websites of the media. So what we see is Google is losing users if you take out the media content. And where are people heading to? Well, they're heading to the media directly. So, and this is just the one shot, right? So if you would play this or have this over a certain time period, our expectation, we do not know, but we expect that it's not just be 8%, but it would increase here to a higher percentage of people who would leave Google for the next searches. So to summarize it all up, a large majority of people in Switzerland use Google as their primary source of information. So 86% are using Google as the information search, right? This is the shift of behavior that all media companies around the world are experiencing. Big tech platforms are now in the #1 position as information sources. And a majority of 53% of the people stay within the Google ecosystem, do not leave it, right? Which is for all the information providers for this big tech bad news. People are more successful and satisfied if they have media content in their search experience. And 70% of the people therefore prefer to have media content as part of their search experience. So people want to have media content inside their Google results. But if you take out the media content, people would tend to leave Google and go directly to the media websites. Now the question is, but what does that mean money-wise, right? So what's the implication on the money side? And therefore, I did not translate it, unfortunately, but I explain it. So therefore, we said, well, if you want to value the content, we have to look at the market. And the market is the search engine market in Switzerland. And here Google has a share of 91% of the search engine advertising market. And so this is about 1 billion Swiss francs yearly. That's the revenue. So that's what Google making out of search engine advertising. But not every search is an information search. There are also product searches. There are also navigational searches. So 55% of the searches are around information. So we said that's the relevant market. Not everything, but everything that's based on information searches. So we come up with 550 million Swiss francs here. And then we say, not every user, not everyone in Switzerland wants to have media content. And we measured that. Only 70% of the people want to have the media content. So once again, it's not 550, but 70% of that. So that's 385 million Swiss francs. That's what Google generates revenues yearly with the help of media. And now the question is, how should this money be shared between Google and the media companies? At the moment, it's zero, right? And we discussed it with our scientific boards. And they said, well, being economists, it said, if there is no sharing at the moment, but we see it's so important, we have a dysfunction of markets here. This is the only reason why this is the case where Google is not paying anything, must be due that we have a monopoly here in place. So look for similar markets to derive what would be a fair share if we had perfect market situation and perfect competition here. Well, in a competition situation, we looked at different contracts we found. For example, Microsoft is sharing, has contracts with media companies where they give between 32 and 60% of the revenues to the publishers, as an example. But also Google in different markets is sharing the money. For example, in the AdSense system, where Google is doing the marketing and sales for media websites, they share between 40 and 60%. So we come up with a number of 40%. We said that will be a fair share, 40% for the publishers of this relevant market, which is 385, which would then make 154 million per year. So 154 million per year, and just keep in mind, Google is making 1 billion with search engine revenues, and we say 154 million, so about 15% we think is a fair share, 15% of the Google revenues in search engine. That's a proxy you could also use for Yahoo Japan or other platforms, actually, as a quick proxy. Also keeping in mind that people are different behavior in different countries, so probably the behavior in Japan will be different. But if you want to have a quick proxy and want to compare what would it mean in Japan, it's about this 15% of the revenues. So to sum it all up, and I'm at the end of my presentation. So media draws attention, drives people into the Google ecosystem. So media, what we see is have a significant impact on the Google ecosystem. But in most of the cases, the media do not get anything in return from Google. We say this is a market failure. We say this needs a regulation because Google is exploiting its position here. And we also say that media have an important role here for society, especially, as I mentioned, in Switzerland, for the democracy. Most people agree that media are important for the democracy. And if you want to have a functioning, stable, sustainable system here, you need to think about how to redistribute the revenues that have been shifted here to the tech platform back to the media. And we come up here with a fair share of 154 million a year that should be redistributed to Google. And at the moment, this law is under evaluation in Switzerland. It's discussed now in Parliament. It could well be that there will be a public vote on this new law. But as far as we understand in the discussion, it has been very important that there is a benchmark that someone tried to evaluate with an evidence approach, what could be the value. Because what I also experience from many countries, so for example, given at the moment Indonesia, I've been talking to them, but also in South Africa, also in California, also in Canada, so many countries. So there is an understanding coming from politics that there needs to be new legislation, there needs to be maybe bargaining codes, there needs to be a system actually to share the revenues that have been shifting to big tech platforms, but no one knows in what extent, right? So in the discussion, this helped very much to have some benchmarks here. And just that you have it in mind, so what's Google thinking is fair, it's 10% of what we're estimating here, right? So that's about what they are ready to share, would be about 10, 20 million. We do not have the figures for Switzerland, but compared to in Germany, there has been a public discussion about this, and that's about what they're ready here to share. It's about 1 to 2% of their revenues. And we suggest, as you remember, 15%, because we think the impact is far higher than discussed before. I hope that was understandable and clear, and thank you very much for the attention. And of course, I would be very happy to discuss it now, and if there's any question, to answer them. So I give back to you.